Hello, welcome to HavahSomeStories. I hope you're having a great day. I will be your host today, Miss HavahLava, and I'm going to read the Tuttle Twins, The Law. It's book 1 from a series. Hope you enjoy it. The Law. Feel free to grab yourself some coloring books, some Play-Doh, some string, wrap it around a stick, and just sit back, relax. Ethan and Emily Tuttle were happy 9-year-old twins who loved learning new things. They were brother and sister, but they were also good friends. They liked doing things together. One day in school, their teacher, Miss Minor, taught the students about wisdom. Miss Minor said that wisdom is when a person knows important and true things. For their homework, Ethan and Emily had to interview someone who was wise. They were supposed to ask a wise person to teach them about something very important. Both of them immediately thought of their next-door neighbor, Fred. Fred was an older man who grew up in France. He was like a grandpa to Ethan and Emily. He often taught them new things. They enjoyed talking to each other while the twins played in their backyard and Fred worked in his garden. Fred seemed to know a lot of interesting stuff. The twins could ask Fred almost anything, like how clouds made their different shapes, or how gasoline makes a car engine run, or how hummingbirds seem to float in the air. He seemed to have the answer for every question. He would be the perfect person to interview. After school, Ethan and Emily dropped off their things at home and hugged their mom. They gathered up some notebooks and pencils and ran across the lawn to Fred's house. The twins knocked on his door and Fred opened it, greeting them with a large grin. "How are my favorite neighbors?" asked Fred. The twins smiled. They liked being the favorites. "What can I help you two with today?" asked Fred. "We're learning about wisdom," said Miss Minor's class. Ethan replied. "We're supposed to interview someone who has it," said Emily. "I see," said Fred, who chuckled as he realized why they came to him. "And you two think that I can help you?" "You bet," said Emily. "Will you help us?" Ethan asked eagerly. Miss Minor said that you should teach us something very important. "I can try," said Fred as he turned around. "I think I know just what to talk with you about. Follow me." Emily, the more energetic of the twins, leaped through the doorway. Ethan walked in behind her. They followed Fred upstairs to his office. It was like being in a library with bookshelves all around the room. There were also extra stacks of overflowing books piled everywhere. Fred clearly liked to read a lot. "Have a seat, kids," Fred said, pointing to the couch. "I want to help you understand what I think is very important." Fred reached up with one hand to pull down a book. "It's something that affects every person every day," he told them. The Tuttle Twins were curious. What could it be, they wondered. Ethan was very clever and liked to try to figure things out. He asked if it might be something about food, since we all eat food every day. Emily had a creative imagination and had a different idea. "I bet it's about the sun," she said, trying to guess. "Those things are important, but I have something else in mind," said Fred. "What is it?" Ethan asked excitedly. He was getting more curious by the minute. Fred held out the book he had taken off the shelf. "This," Fred told them. Ethan and Emily read the title of the book, The Law. They couldn't quite pronounce the author's name, Frederick Bassett. "My parents named me after this man," explained Fred. He taught people many important ideas about the government. The twins glanced at each other with a look of confusion on their face. "The law affects us every day?" asked Emily, looking up at Fred. "That's what you think is very important?" Ethan asked, folding his arms and frowning his brow. "Are you sure?" he said while he wrote down the law in his notebook. "It's absolutely important," Fred said, "and I bet by the time we're done, you'll agree." Ethan still wasn't convinced. He was used to learning about interesting things like sharks or Venus flytraps or rockets. "Our uncle is a police officer," Emily told Fred. "I think he works with the laws." "Yes, he does," Fred agreed. "When people think of the law, they usually think of speeding tickets or putting criminals in jail. But it's much more than that," he said. "You, me, and every other person has something called rights," he explained. Emily wrote, "We have rights," in her notebook. Having rights means that there are some things I can do that nobody else is allowed to stop me, Fred explained. "Like playing with my own toys," Ethan wondered aloud. "Sure," said Fred. "Or thinking about things you want, or spending time with your friends, or going to church," Fred told them. While you two are still children, your parents are responsible to teach you and help you to use your rights in a good way," he said. "But not when I'm all grown up," Emily said, standing up on her tiptoes a little taller. "That's right," Fred replied. "As adults, nobody else should stop you from using your rights. You'll be responsible for yourself." Ethan wondered what he and Emily would look like as grown-ups. What would they do with all of their rights? "I know you and your family go to church," Fred said. Ethan and Emily nodded. "Think of rights this way. God gives us our lives, and he gives us our ability to think, learn, and act. God also gives us the ability to know what things are right or wrong," he told them. Ethan's eyes lit up. "That's called your conscience," he said in a loud voice. The picture says right, wrong. "That's exactly right, Ethan," Fred told him. He was happy to see that they were beginning to understand. Ethan wrote, "We have a conscience," in his notebook after Fred helped him with the spelling. Emily wrote, "Our rights are from God," in hers. "God gave us these things, and we have the responsibility to preserve them and develop them," he said. Fred looked serious when he began to say, "We also need to protect them." "From bad guys?" Emily asked, as she held her clenched fist in the air. "Exactly right," Fred smiled. "Since people want to protect their rights and stop bad guys, they group together. We often call this type of group a government." Ethan and Emily locked arms and ran around the room, punching and kicking in the air. "So the government fights the bad guys, right?" Ethan asked. He was imagining government agents in superhero costumes. "That's the idea, Ethan, but it doesn't always work out that way," Fred told him. "In many cases, the bad guys can become a part of the government." They stopped punching and kicking. Their jaws dropped open in disbelief. "There are bad guys who are part of the government?" "How can that be?" wondered Emily. "Bad guys in government don't wear capes or look like villains," said Fred. They look normal and say things that a lot of people like, he explained. Emily wrote, "Bad guys can be in government," in her notebook as a reminder. If there are bad guys in government, what do they do? Ethan asked for their next interview question. That's an important question, Ethan, noted Fred as he looked out the window. Let's go out to my garden so I can explain. It was a sunny afternoon and the breeze felt wonderful. Ethan had always liked exploring new things in the outdoors. Emily liked chasing butterflies and birds. Fred led them over to the raised garden boxes he worked in each day. He was growing tomatoes, corn, peppers, and zucchini, among other things. "Did you see my prized tomatoes here?" Fred asked. "Miss Lopez across the street really enjoys these whenever I take her some." Fred plucked a juicy red tomato off its vine and held it toward the twins. "What would you think if she were to take my tomatoes without asking?" he questioned. "Well, that would be wrong, of course," said Emily matter-of-factly. Their parents had always taught them that stealing was wrong. Shouldn't her conscience tell her to stop? Ethan thought out loud. "Definitely," Fred replied. Now imagine that Mrs. Lopez asks your police officer uncle to help her get one. What would you think if he came and took my tomatoes to give to Mrs. Lopez? Ethan suspected that this was a trick question. "That would still be wrong," he said cautiously. "Even if somebody from the government doing it for her?" asked Emily. "Wrong is wrong, no matter who does it," she simply said. "That's right," Fred proudly replied. Ethan wrote down, "Stealing is always wrong." "You two are learning something that many people don't understand," he said. "Remember how we all have rights and that we form governments to protect those rights?" "Yep," Emily said as she interlocked arms with her brother, ready to fight the bad guys. "If something is wrong for us to do, it's wrong for the people of government to do," Fred told them. Ethan and Emily both nodded. "Wrong is wrong no matter what," Emily said. Fred's cat, Dusty, had followed the group outside and began to make purring sounds. Ethan patted Dusty and asked, "Do bad guys in government take your things, Fred?" "Let's go into the kitchen so I can explain that," Fred said. The twins raced to be first inside. Fred opened the door to his large pantry. It had many shelves full of food. It was like being inside of a grocery store. "I store extra food in here so I can help people who are hungry," said Fred. Emily liked all of the colorful boxes of cereal. Ethan was trying to count how many cans of chili Fred had. "Sometimes I make meals for families when the dad loses his job or when the mom has a new baby," Fred told them. "That seems really nice," Emily commented. "But what does it have to do with the government?" asked Ethan. "Well, nothing," Fred stated. "I help people because I want to. But the government forces me to help people too." Is that really so bad?" Emily asked. "Lots of sick people or hungry people need your help, right?" "Remember my question about your police officer uncle taking my tomatoes for Mrs. Lopez?" Fred responded. The twins nodded. It was always wrong to steal, they remembered. Just like that, the bad guys in government take my things and give them to others without my permission. Sometimes they take my things to keep them for themselves or give away to their friends instead of helping the needy, Fred told them. "They sound like pirates," Ethan said, imagining Fred walking the plank at the point of a sword. Fred chuckled. "Yes, Ethan, pirates steal things. That's called plunder. But if bad guys in government do it, We call that legal plunder. And there are laws that let bad guys in government plunder like pirates? Emily asked. If a law lets the government do something I'm not allowed to do, then it is not a true law, said Fred. True laws protect people and their property from plunder, Fred explained. When true laws exist and are respected, people work hard to improve their lives, and they work peacefully with others. Everyone prospers together and is happier. Ethan wrote down, true laws protect people, Fred continued. When there isn't any legal plunder, people rely on the kindness and services of others for the things that they need. But when the laws let people plunder, it turns everyone against each other, Fred said. Everyone wants to take instead of give. Some people stop working hard and begin looking to the government to take care of them instead. When this happens, the government begins to control everything. They like to control things, Fred told the twins. Then who stops the bad guys if they are in the government? Emily wondered. Excellent question, Fred said, snapping his fingers. Let's head back upstairs for the answer. Good picture. Fred walked back to his office and picked up his copy of the law again. When the government does bad things, it's hard to fight back because they are very powerful, Fred said. Being bullied by a kid at school is bad, but imagine if all the teachers and principals were bullies, he continued. I would probably run away from school, Ethan replied. So would I, agreed Fred. He handed the book to his interviewers. And so we fight back with ideas, said Fred, like the ones in this book, like the ones I've been teaching you about just now. Remember that you too are special, he told the twins. You have rights, and so you also have responsibilities. You should help people if they need something, but the law shouldn't force you to. Emily wrote, we should help people in her notebook. That makes sense, she said. But why don't more people know about this? That's what wisdom is all about, Emily. We each have to learn important lessons that we use in our lives and then teach them to others, Fred said. That's what books like this help us do, he told the twins, pointing to the copy of the law he was still holding. It's what wise people throughout history have done, and now you can help your friends and family learn about it too, Fred suggested. Fred said they could borrow his book even though they didn't know a lot of the words in it. Maybe your parents would enjoy reading it, he told them. He also gave them a jar of his prized tomatoes to take home. As they were walking back to their house, Ethan had a great idea and suddenly stopped. He whispered his idea to Emily, who smiled and nodded. The twins had a plan. Looking both ways before they crossed the street, they knocked on the door of a nearby house. Miss Lopez opened the door. Happy to see the twins, we brought you a present, Miss Lopez, Emily and Ethan said in unison. They handed the prized tomatoes to her. With smiles on their face from ear to ear. We wanted to share with you, and nobody else made us do it, Ethan exclaimed. You Tuttle Twins are very kind and wise beyond your years, said Miss Lopez. To thank them for their good deed, she offered them each a homemade cookie. They felt very happy that they had learned some wisdom that day. The end. Thanks for reading with me today, and I hope you liked this story. And tune in next time. Like and subscribe. Talk to you later. Bye.